Hey there. Tonight, we're setting sail not for glory, not for riches, but for truth. A gentler kind of truth, told slowly and softly. The kind that drifts across the sea with the morning fog. You've heard the stories, of course. Pirates with gleaming swords and wide-brimmed hats. Of treasure maps and hidden islands. Of freedom on the open ocean and life lived outside the rules. But what if you were really there? What would it feel like beneath your bare feet, in your belly, in your bones, to live a day aboard a pirate ship? This story is not one of gold or glamour. It's about the creaking of timber underfoot, the sting of salt in your eyes, and the quiet, constant struggle to survive when the sea is both your home and your enemy. So let's go there together. Let's drift into the past and place you just for a moment on deck at dawn, aboard a pirate ship. And before we unfurl the sails, if this slow sail through history helps ease your mind, feel free to drop anchor with a like and subscribe to our humble vessel, but only if the waters feel calm enough for you. And in the comments, tell me where you'd be listening from, and what hour the tide finds ye. Always warms me old heart to know who's drifting off to the same quiet tale across these distant shores. The sun has not yet risen, but you're awake. You didn't sleep well, not that anyone really does, packed shoulder to shoulder in the stale, humid darkness of the lower deck. The planks above you groan softly as the ship rolls over sluggish waves, and somewhere nearby a man is coughing again. He hasn't stopped in days. You climb the ladder with slow, aching limbs, your hands sticky with old salt. As you emerge on deck, the wind greets you with no kindness. It slaps at your face, thick with brine, and the sharp scent of seaweed and oil. The sky is smeared with pre-dawn gray, clouds heavy and low. There is no privacy. There is no softness. The world is all wood and rope and water. The deck is slick with last night's rain. You step around a swollen barrel leaking sour pickle brine and a pile of rat-chewed cloth that once might have been someone's shirt. Already the boatswain is barking orders, his voice rougher than the rope in his hand. His eyes find you, late again. You swallow whatever apology might rise, because here it won't be heard. Your stomach heaves, it always does. No matter how many weeks you've been out here, the sea never lets you forget you don't belong. The roll of the ship, the stench of tar and unwashed bodies, it turns in your gut like spoiled grog. You crouch low, trying not to lose what little you ate hardtack and weevil-riddled grain, soaked in brackish water. Nearby, a man laughs. Not cruelly, just wearily. He's missing 2 teeth and wears a rope as a belt. You'll learn his name eventually, if he lives that long. The captain, you haven't seen him yet this morning, but he doesn't need to be seen to be felt. His word is law. He decides who eats, who rows, who bleeds. On paper, piracy is democratic elections, shares of loot, voting on leadership. In practice, it's all about force. The strongest voices, the cruelest punishments, the heaviest fists. One man whipped for stealing salt. Another tossed overboard for mutiny. And no one dares speak his name anymore. The ship itself groans and creaks, a body of its own. Masts sway like ancient trees, and the sails patched a dozen times over strain against the wind. Somewhere to the west, thunder rumbles like a distant drumbeat. Storms are common here, sudden, violent, the kind that tear through canvas and snap masts like twigs. There's no place to hide when the sky turns black. You bail water, hold the ropes, Pray to gods you never believed in on land. Below deck it's no better. Crates of dried fish and moldy bread. Rats, bold and fat, scurry between hammocks. They fear nothing, not even you. Their red eyes glint in the dark as they nibble at stores meant to last another month. Hunger gnaws at the men as surely as the salt eats the wood. And yet, this is life. The rhythm of your days is the rhythm of the sea. Rise, labor, eat if lucky, sleep if allowed. There is no escape. Only the next port, the next raid, the next chance at silver, and a sip of something stronger than rainwater. But even then, you wonder if you'll survive that long. Because the truth is, it's not the sword that breaks you. It's the constant, unrelenting hum of hardship. The sea never rests, and neither do you. Imagine now not the nameless soul on deck, but the figure who cast the longest shadow over the waves. A man both feared and admired, whose legend grew larger than the sails he commanded. His name was Edward Teach, though most knew him by another Blackbeard. No one's quite sure where he was born. Some say Bristol, others the dark, foggy shores of Devon, but what's agreed is that by the early 1700s he had already taken to the sea, a privateer first, then something less sanctioned. Blackbeard did not rise quickly by accident. He was clever, cautious, charismatic in his own quiet way. He understood that fear was a currency sometimes more powerful than gold. Picture him as they did then, a towering man with a thick black beard, braided with slow-burning fuses that would hiss and smoke as he strode across the deck. His eyes said to glint with wildness, or maybe calculation. Pistols crisscrossed his chest, a cutlass at his hip. His ship, the Queen Anne's Revenge, a former French slaver, now bristling with 40 cannons. But what made Blackbeard truly dangerous was that he rarely needed to fire them. He cultivated terror like a farmer grows crops. The mere whisper of his name, Blackbeard, is often all it took. Ships surrendered before a single shot. He made fortune not through endless bloodshed, but through showmanship. Still, he was no stranger to violence. He blockaded Charleston's harbor in 1718, holding hostages until the town sent over medicine for his crew. Not riches, not women, but medicine. Perhaps even pirates had moments of mercy or desperation. It's hard to tell which was which. And yet, even as his legend grew, so did his enemies. The British crown had grown tired of the chaos. Pirates had become more than a nuisance. They were bad for trade, for order, for pride. So Blackbeard, like many before him, was offered a pardon. He took it at first, settled briefly in North Carolina. But the sea, like the past, is hard to leave behind. He sailed again. And soon Governor Alexander Spotswood of Virginia had had enough. A plan was set. Lieutenant Robert Maynard was dispatched. 2 ships filled with soldiers slipped through the fog toward Ocracoke Inlet, where Blackbeard's vessel lay anchored. What happened next was swift and final. Blackbeard fought fiercely. It's said he took 5 bullets and more than 20 sword cuts before falling, and when they were sure he was dead, Maynard had his head severed and hung from the bowsprit, a grim warning to other pirates still chasing salt-stained dreams. But in death, Blackbeard only grew larger. Legends whispered that his skull was turned into a drinking cup, that his treasure remained buried where no man could find it. Some swore they saw his ghost wandering the coast, still searching, still sailing. The truth? Perhaps it's enough to know that he lived with purpose and died as he chose, defiant on the water, blade in hand. The tide moves ever on, and now we turn our gaze not to a man, but to a place where pirates once ruled together. Let's drift to the shores of New Providence. Let your mind drift now, away from the roar of cannon fire and the final gasps of legend, toward warmer waters and the quiet curl of surf on golden sand. New Providence Island, the Bahamas, early 1700s. At first glance it might have seemed a paradise. Palm-fringed shores, water clear as glass. The harbor at Nassau a perfect crescent, deep and protected. Ships could anchor close, safe from storms and navies alike. But this place was no haven for peace. It was a sanctuary for outlaws. Imagine it. Over 1,000 pirates, hardened by salt and scar, living together in uneasy camaraderie. The rules of kings meant little here. There were no governors, no taxes, no standing armies. Only codes agreed upon by vote, and broken as often as they were kept. This was the Pirate Republic. At its height, Nassau was a world turned upside down. Here, the dispossessed and desperate carved out something strange, part brotherhood, part anarchy. Captains were chosen, not born. Loot was shared unevenly, yes, but more fairly than in most navies. Black men walked freely. Some even captained ships. And women, rare as they were, could, at times, rise to command respect, fear, even ships of their own. There was no real government, but there were names that held sway. Benjamin Hornigold, who once tried to keep raids legal by attacking only enemy nations. Charles Vane, violent and defiant, who respected no flag. And Calico Jack Rackham remembered more for the women who sailed with him, Anne Bonny and Mary Read, than for any great feats of piracy. Every tavern in Nassau was heavy with smoke, rum, and story. Gold clinked across warped tabletops. Dice rolled, knives flashed. Songs were shouted in tongues from every coast. At night, the island glowed with the flicker of oil lamps and the heat of reckless laughter. But paradise, real or imagined, cannot last. With freedom came chaos. Factions splintered, alliances frayed, and the crown, ever watchful, began to plan. In 1718, Woodes Rogers arrived with a fleet and a mission. He came bearing pardons for those who surrendered, and cannons for those who didn't. Many pirates accepted his offer. Others fled. A few fought and fell. The Republic ended not with a battle, but a slow unraveling. By the end of the year, order returned. The flags of empire flew once more over the harbor, and the dream of a pirate utopia faded like mist in morning sun. Still, in quiet corners, some whispered that the spirit of Nassau never truly died. That freedom, once tasted, leaves a hunger behind. And perhaps, in some way, it's still out there, between the stars and the tides, waiting for those brave or desperate enough to seek it. Now we look to those who hunted the hunters, to men in powdered wigs and polished boots, who fought piracy not with cutlasses, but with pens, policies, and porcelain cups of tea. Let us walk the quiet halls of the British Admiralty. And now we step off the creaking decks, away from the salt-stung air and into a different world entirely. Imagine polished floors beneath your boots, walls lined with maps drawn by candlelight and ink-stained fingers. The gentle tick of a long case clock echoes down a quiet corridor. Welcome to the British Admiralty, London 1715 and onward. The sea may belong to no man, but the men in these rooms believed otherwise. Here, piracy was not a story of daring or freedom. It was a threat, a thorn in the ribs of empire, and it was bad for business. While pirates scraped by on ships patched with tar and prayer, these men worked from offices carved from oak and crowned with chandeliers. Their weapons were treaties, naval blockades, bureaucratic decrees. In time, their aim was not just to kill pirates, but to erase them. They studied shipping routes, tracked known pirate haunts, and quietly funded privateers to hunt those who strayed too far from pardon. They sent governors to troubled colonies with orders sealed in wax. They arranged for local laws to be rewritten, trials held on distant shores, gallows built with fresh timber, and all the while the tea was hot. Across the polished tables of the Admiralty, decisions were made that would ripple out across oceans. Ships like H.M.'s Pearl and Lime were dispatched, captains given full authority to capture or kill. Entire crews offered amnesty if they named names. It was a chess game played with human lives. In their view, it was simple. Pirates were a disease and the crown was the cure. But what they may never have fully grasped was that piracy hadn't just grown in the gaps of empire. It had thrived there, among the sailors abandoned by their navies, among enslaved men who found freedom on stolen ships, among those who saw in piracy not evil, but a last chance at dignity, wealth, or escape. Still, the tide was turning. The final years of the so-called Golden Age saw pirate flags lowered or burned. The gallows grew busy in Jamaica, Barbados, and Charleston. Executions became public warnings. Stories were twisted into morality tales. Children would soon read about pirates not as rebels, but as monsters tamed by crown and cross. Back in London, Admiralty officials marked their progress in ledgers, ink drying over the names of the condemned. They congratulated one another quietly. Another ocean tamed, another threat removed. But behind the smiles and snuff boxes, they knew the truth. So long as there were ships and storms and treasure to be moved in secret, there would always be pirates. If not in name, then in spirit. And now, as we leave behind both the smoke-filled taverns of Nassau and the silk-lined chambers of the Admiralty, the sea grows still again. The stars hang low, and all that's left is the hush of memory. Let's drift now into our final thought soft and slow before the tide takes us completely. And so our sails lower. The wind has eased. The decks are quiet. Only the hush of water against wood remains. Tonight we've wandered through a world long vanished. We've stood beneath the harsh sun on splintered planks, felt the weight of hunger, the sharp edge of fear. We followed Blackbeard into battle, heard the ghost of his footsteps in the shallows of Ocracoke. We drank with outlaws in the wild, chaotic promise of Nassau, and we sat in shadowed halls, listening to the Admiralty whisper the end of it all. Pirates, not the ones from storybooks, but the real ones, hard, flawed, cunning, brave, and broken. Men and women shaped by tides they could not control, who carved short, dangerous lives in the gaps left by empires. And you were with them. You drifted quietly among their stories, a silent soul in borrowed boots, feeling the pull of the sea and the ache of the past. But now your ship has reached calm waters. No more storms tonight, only the gentle lap of waves against your thoughts, and the distant creak of dreams setting sail. If you haven't already, you may find it's time to rest your eyes. And if you're still awake, well, Perhaps you're not quite ready to leave. That's all right, too. The ocean waits for no one, but she welcomes all who wander. And just one last whisper before we part. If this slow sail through time eased your mind, you're welcome to stay aboard. Drop anchor with a like or join our crew with a quiet subscription only, if it feels right in your bones. And do tell us in the comments where you be listening from and what hour the tide found ye. Till next time, may your sleep be deep and your dreams full of quiet adventure.